When it comes to listening to albums, I'm really peculiar about presentation. Personally, I don't care about how long an album is, as long as all of the songs have a reason to be on the same album. So let's talk about album filler. Filler can be defined in a few different ways, but primarily filler is media that exists to fill a specific medium, sometimes of lesser quality than what surrounds it. You see this in TV shows where you might have extra scenes that don't add anything to the story. There can also be filler in books where more words or pages are added just for a longer length, but this can also apply to musical albums. What's considered filler is usually subjective, but I'm just going to cover a few characteristics. If you read reviews or have a conversation with somebody about an album, sometimes you'll hear them say, "Oh, that song? I usually skip over it." Well, what makes a song skippable? I categorize filler in two ways. The first way is by an actual song that isn't as good as the rest of the album, and the second way being a noise track, interlude, intro, or outro. Any band can be guilty of having filler. Even the Beatles had their share of filler tracks. Many, myself included, consider Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite to be a weak track on Sgt. Pepper's. It's not easy sometimes for a band to determine what the fans are going to like and not like. The bands that you like could be totally in love with a song that you despise. Personally, if I'm listening to a whole album, I never skip tracks. Even if there are weak songs I'm not in love with at first, continuing to listen to them means I'm giving them a chance to possibly become favorites. For instance, on Kiss Revenge, I used to only pay attention to the hit songs, but after listening to that album for a lot of years, my favorite songs on it are Heart of Chrome and Tough Love. Deciding how to start an album can be difficult, but go to your music browser and type intro in the search bar, and see how many results there are. I don't mind an album starting off quiet as long as it properly builds to the first song, and preferably as part of it. Pink Floyd's Speak to Me starts The Dark Side of the Moon as it needs to, referencing highlights of the following songs while creeping up to Breathe. If you absolutely have to have an intro, then I would prefer the intro be like this instead of the typical minute of wind or noise that nobody wants to sit through. Most people just skip to the second track. Or, even better, you could start the album loud and have the first song go into the second track. Judas Priest did this with The Hellion and Electric Eye. Both are brilliant on their own, but you wouldn't want to listen to one without the other. When it comes to music, the medium it's intended for can determine what makes an album. A record on average can typically play 20 to 25 minutes of music for each side, so an album from the 1970s will often be from 40 to 50 minutes long. A CD can generally hold 78 minutes of music, so bands are tempted to put a massive amount of music on each disc. Sometimes the result is bonus tracking, where you have the album like normal without concern of a long runtime, but the bands will put demos, live tracks, and songs left off the album from the same sessions. Fine enough. But then there are bands that feel the need to fill the CD with interludes, skits, and noise tracks just for the sake of getting a long runtime. Tool does this quite a bit. Anima is a classic album with a runtime of 78 minutes. Out of 15 tracks, 5 of those aren't what I consider songs. I think without those tracks, Tool could have still made an amazing album. That's the key to determine filler. Would you miss it if it was gone? Sometimes you have filler tracks that are there to give the listener a break if the music is really intense. But when that's the case, I prefer there be slower or quieter songs in between instead of noise. Bad Brains did this with their first album. Instead of having throwaway tracks, they did reggae songs here and there to break up the monotony. So you can mosh and relax. Then there's filler that can actually add to the experience of the album. Take Black Sabbath, Master of Reality. There are 2 short and quiet songs, Embryo and Orchid. There are 2 ways that you can listen to the album. The first is with all 8 songs, and the second way is without Embryo and Orchid. If you go without those songs, then for the most part, you have the album going at full force with sludge and doom. If you listen to all 8 songs, then you have a more dynamic album, where there's a calm before the storm. Playing Orchid will make Lord of this World seem a lot heavier. In death metal, there's Morbid Angel's Blessed Are the Sick. Morbid Angel's in-between tracks are usually filled with mystic evil sounds, and sometimes acoustic guitar musings. This usually makes the album more mysterious and dark. Their next album, Covenant, has 9 songs with the band and 1 song full of this dark synthesizer noise. Since the album is supposed to sound heavy and evil, Narmadaru is good because it still sounds evil, but in a different way. Some people consider cover songs to be filler. In a way, it's understandable. A common debate between Megadeth fans is Rust in Peace versus Peace Sells But Who's Buying? A point that people sometimes bring up is that Peace Sells has a cover. I ain't superstitious. If you're trying to determine the best representation of the band, it's natural to want the album to be 100% that band and no one else's work. Granted, a cover song can expand and improve on the ideas of the source material. I like to think that the Ramones cover of California Sun destroys the original. While Gould completely reworked What a Wonderful World to be about nuclear war, I think that this different take gives the original a lot more life. In this way, I can consider this to be just as good as any of the other songs on Maniacs. What constitutes filler depends on the listener, but sometimes songs are better on their own than with the album, and other songs are better with the album than by themselves. Those who listen to albums for just a couple of songs aren't going to mind, but for those like me who want a perfect album, it can be an issue. My thing is that when I talk to people about an album, I want to be able to say every song on that album is gold. If there's a song that you don't like, give it another chance, and that record could be the consistent record that you've been searching for.